Wizards and witches, framed in cherry wood, kept watch over the living room of the tiny apartment, their gaze now focused on a flame hovering over a stick of incense. Gargoyles with massive dark wings squatted on a mantle, distorting lines of smoke with their sniffing, and scowled at how long the smell lingered in their nostrils. Black cats with eerie white eyes stared out from the throw pillows they covered, eyes that followed Lolita as she carried a burgundy candle and black roses in a glass vase. She placed the lit candle on a black iron table next to a clay ceramic Katrina, whose beige skirt was completely adorned with yellow flowers. A stunning bouquet of orange and yellow roses covered the Katrina's midsection, while a crown of daisies circled the skull. Lolita picked a black rose from the vase and lay it at the feet of the grinning Katrina. "A perfect addition to my home," said Lolita, nodding her head. "And to think, I almost didn't bring you, because my goody two-shoe sister said you were offensive to God. How could such beauty be offensive to God? I mean, we all look like you at some point in our existence." Lolita entered the small kitchen of her one-bedroom apartment and sliced tomato and onion. She hummed the melody of Tata Dios and occasionally glanced over at her phone when pings announced incoming texts. Just Alba, her mom, and a few friends from work. No messages important enough to interrupt her cooking. The rapid knocking sound against the chopping board overwhelmed the pings, but she somehow managed to hear a faint noise coming from somewhere in the near vicinity. She stopped to listen, but the noise vanished. "Probably the neighbors walking by," said Lolita, and went back to chopping. She placed a small frying pan on the stove, poured cooking oil, lit the stove, and waited for the oil to heat up. After a few minutes, she slapped a bloody ribeye steak on the pan, filling the room with sizzles and pops. About to flip the steak, the noise filtrated the room again, and this time she pinpointed the sound to be coming from her front door. She recognized the sound to be a persistent scratching. "I hope some poor cat isn't lost," she said. She tried to ignore the scratching by flipping the steak and tossing the tomato and onion into the pan. The scratching got louder. No problem. She just flipped on the oven fan and stirred her food. And this time she didn't hum. She sang out the lyrics to Tata Dios as she set the table with a burgundy table mat, a white plate, and a fork and a knife. By the time the table was set and her food was done, the scratching had stopped. "Whatever it was, I'm glad it's gone." She sat down at her small round table with a glass of red wine. "A toast to my new Katrina," said Lolita, raising her glass. About to take a sip, the scratching returned, this time accompanied by meows, but not any regular meows. This meowing emitted pain, the kind of pain that made her flinch and spill a few drops of wine on the beige tablecloth. What does this poor creature want? She set her glass on the table and fetched a broom that stood in the corner of the kitchen. Whatever it wants, it ain't getting anything from me. She planned to open the door and shoo the creature away. She just hoped it was a cat and not some nasty possum or disgusting rat. This had never happened before, so she really didn't know what to expect. Probably someone's lost pet. She didn't have pets for this very reason. They tended to run off or get lost and caused their owner a headache. They were too needy and clingy and expensive. The same with kids. She didn't like being needed. Nieces and nephews were enough. And even then, she tended to keep her distance. So whatever was at her door had to go, no matter how bad off it looked, no matter what big sad eyes looked up at her. As soon as she opened the door, a gray cat with a terrible odor delivered a gaze she could never forget. The eyes discharged a plea for mercy. Judging by the dried blood around a torn ear and the pus oozing out of the wound, and judging by the flesh dangling from the cat's hind limb, Lolita knew why. Lolita grimaced and raised the broom to scoot the cat away. Of all the doors in the apartment complex, why did the cat come to hers? She had no idea what she could do to help it. She wasn't a nurse, a veterinarian, not even a cat lover. The poor thing was obviously brutally attacked, but how was that her problem? What if it died on her doorstep? Oh my God, what would she do then? Pushing it over to her neighbor's side seemed like the best option. Instead of smacking the cat, she brushed its side with the bristles of the broom, hoping that would be less painful. The cat let out a loud and piercing whine. "Poor thing," said Lolita, frowning. "I didn't mean to hurt you, more than you already are. The least I can do is give you some water. Just stay put, okay? Be a good little cat and don't move." Opening a cabinet in the kitchen, she rummaged through ceramic bowls, searching for one she didn't mind parting with. For some reason they all become valuable to her. She closed her cabinet without choosing any. She remembered she had styrofoam bowls in the pantry and filled one with water from the sink. When she entered the living room, she gasped and stopped abruptly, spilling half of the water out of the bowl. The cat managed to make it into the living room, but not without leaving a trail of blood on her pine laminate flooring. "Didn't I tell you to stay put?" said Lolita, placing the bowl on the floor. "Look at the mess you made. That's why I'll never own a pet." She watched the cat gratefully pull water into its mouth with its tiny tongue. "Whatever attacked you sure did a number on you," said Lolita, looking the cat over. "I'm surprised you escaped with your life." The cat crouched into a small, tight ball, lowering its head and flattening its ears. It gave a mournful meow, so mournful Lolita was overcome with pity. "Poor thing, I wonder who you belong to," said Lolita. Before realizing what she had done, she stroked the cat's fur as if it were a perfectly healthy cat without any infected wounds. She should have never laid a hand on it, for in touching the cat, all its anguish rushed through her body, causing Lolita to fold over and lose her breath. Lolita hissed and shrieked as she fought off an invisible dog. She fled to the kitchen and crouched in a corner, but the connection was already made. She connected to the cat's pain and to the cat's desire. Mercy. The cat desired mercy. The cat was dying, and pain kept it awake. Now the cat just wanted to sleep. The cat wanted Lolita to help it fall asleep. Lolita covered her mouth with both hands. "I can't," said Lolita, shaking her head. "I won't." The cat slowly approached Lolita and rubbed its body against her leg. Lolita's eyes swelled with tears. The pain was too much to endure, too intense to ignore. "Why did you have to come to my door?" said Lolita. She rocked her body back and forth, banging her back against the wall and saying, "What do I do?" "Something I can't do." The cat whined in Lolita's ears and rubbed against her again. Lolita would have suffered a nervous breakdown if the Katrina hadn't caught her attention. The skeletal figure sucked in her anxiety through its hollow, dark eye sockets and released a calming spirit through its perpetual grin. This time, when the cat whined and the cat rubbed against her, Lolita no longer felt pain and no longer fought against what had to be done. This time when the cat whined and the cat rubbed against her, a grin spread across her face. Lolita stood and closed the front door and turned off the living room lights. She found a pink towel in the bathroom and used the towel to wrap around the cat. She cradled the cat close to her bosom and bounced it softly as she swayed in front of the Katrina, humming the melody to Tata Dios. In the glow of the candlelight, Lolita could see the cat's haunting eyes looking up at her, and she could hear the cat softly purring. She didn't want to see the eyes. She didn't want to hear the purring. Her humming intensified as she smothered the cat's face against her chest. When she used up all her strength and could hum no more, she relaxed her arms and looked down. The cat was finally asleep, and that brought a smile to Lolita, a smile of satisfaction for having fulfilled the cat's desire. She pulled a black plastic trash bag from the pantry and carefully placed the cat inside, the cat still wrapped in the pink towel. Her plan was to toss the cat in the apartment dumpster, since she had no yard to bury it in. She was sure others had done similar things with their pets. She shouldn't feel bad. This is why she never wanted a pet. Pets tended to die, bringing heartache to their owners. When she opened the front door, she immediately dropped the trash bag to the floor. This couldn't be. This shouldn't be. Of all the apartments in her complex, why was hers chosen? Why not her neighbor's or someone on the second floor? Unfortunately, the door was now open and she could not close it. A dying, wounded dog lay sprawled out on her welcome mat, and behind the dog, another beaten and rotting cat stood in line. And somewhere in the darkness, creatures howled and meowed and whimpered, all of them crying out for mercy. "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," said Alba, praying along with the rosary while she drove home from work. It had been an ordinary day in customer service, answering phone calls, correcting accounts, setting up payment plans, and apologizing to angry clients. It was the last call, however, that ruined her whole day. A woman called in, and by the first words out of the woman's mouth, Alba knew she would have to utilize her best active listening and best conflict resolution skills. "Who the hell is in charge?" said the woman. Though Alba politely introduced herself, the woman had no time for politeness. "I need you to pass me to your supervisor," continued the woman. "Now. If you let me know your issue, I would be more than happy to help you," answered Alba. "I don't want your help," said the woman. "I want to speak to your supervisor, and don't go wasting my time getting my name and information. You people have wasted too much of my time already." "I am so sorry to hear you were not helped by our staff," said Alba. "But if I could get into your account, I am sure I can resolve any issues you may have." "What did I just tell you?" said the woman with a much harsher voice. "Are you people deaf? I need to speak to your supervisor. Get me the supervisor right now." "My supervisor's going to want to know what the issue is," said Alba with a calm voice. "Could you let me know the issue?" "Do you not understand English?" said the woman. "I said I need to speak to your supervisor. Now get me on, or I'll report your sorry ass." "There is no need to use that kind of language," said Alba. "Oh, so now you understand what I'm saying." The woman then went on a cussing rampage, calling Alba every derogatory name in the book. Alba gave the woman a warning that if she continued with profanity, the call would be terminated. When the woman continued with the profanity, Alba ended the call just in time to keep herself from responding with her own set of insults. She threw off her headset and buried her face in her hands. After taking a deep breath, she raised her head and looked at the image of a guardian angel taped to the left side of her monitor. "I won't let this take away my peace," she said. "It's over. I'll never hear from this woman again. Just let it go." She thought she had overcome the feelings of anger because she smiled and waved goodnight to her co-workers and even let a known gossiper cut in line at the exit. The feelings, however, returned as she drove down Interstate 35 and into traffic. The woman's words kept repeating themselves in her mind, and to every word, Alba had a ferocious response. As she replayed the scene over and over, her grip on the steering wheel grew tighter and tighter. She honked at anyone who cut in her lane and flipped them the bird with the intensity of a person ready to get off the car and bang in a windshield with a crowbar. When a car drove too slowly in front of her, she punched her horn repeatedly and cursed the driver for existing. Alba pulled up beside the car and opened her passenger side window, about to give the driver a piece of her mind. Alba's mouth opened, but she stopped the insults from flowing out when she saw that the driver was a tiny, hunched-over white-haired woman with large round glasses. The old woman turned to Alba, and Alba just smiled and waved and raised her window. "I need some serious peace," said Alba. She searched up the rosary on YouTube and began praying the Our Father and 10 Hail Marys and the Glory Be. The repetitive prayers brought the boiling rage down to a simmer and then to a total cooling down. By the time she got off the highway and got closer to her street, she steered with her fingertips and felt no need to honk when a man on a bicycle pedaled in front of her and slowed her down to the point of barely moving. The slowing down must have been part of God's will. That was the only way she could explain it. If she hadn't been driving at 10 miles per hour, she would have never seen the old Chihuahua in the alley between 4th and 5th Streets. She abruptly pressed on the brakes, almost causing the car behind her to ram into her. Luckily, the car stopped just a few centimeters from her rear bumper. She rolled down her window and stuck out her arm to tell the driver to go around her. Once the car swerved off, she put her own vehicle in reverse and headed back to the alley. Normally, she would have paid no attention to a dog in an alley. She had no pets of her own, though her kids always begged her for a dog, especially for a Yorkie. "Absolutely not," she would tell them. They'd take care of the dog for a week and then forget about it. And who would be left cleaning up its mess and taking it for a walk? Alba and her husband, that's who. So no matter how much they begged and pleaded and promised they would be responsible, she refused to get them a pet. What made her take notice of the Chihuahua was that it kept bumping into a wooden fence. "The poor thing must be blind," was Alba's immediate conclusion. Probably blind from old age. How it got into the alley she had no idea, and maybe she didn't want to know. The thought of its owner abandoning it and leaving it to die made her stomach churn. She pulled into the alley and stepped out of the car. The brown Chihuahua, so thin you could see the outline of its rib cage, advanced a few inches and then turned into the fence, knocking its head against the wood. It whimpered as it repeated the same actions 2 more times. Alba approached the Chihuahua from behind. There, little doggy. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm here to help." The dog must have felt her presence and growled. Now, said Alba, You don't have to be afraid of me. Take it easy. I just want to pet you." She barely ran a few fingers over the dog's fur when the dog let out ferocious barks and displayed its tiny fangs. Quickly pulling her hand away, Alba said, "It's okay, look, I'm backing away. You don't have to get upset. Let's just calm down and start over." The dog gave a low growl and gradually relaxed. "You see, I didn't hurt you. I would never hurt you. But if you don't let me touch you, then I can't help you. And if I can't help you, you're going to be stuck here all alone, bumping into this fence until who knows when. So are we good? Huh? Are we going to be calm and friendly?" Alba cautiously put her hand over the Chihuahua's little head and gently stroked the fur. "You see, everything's going to be fine." Then everything felt wrong. Alba could hear voices that made her wince. First, a woman's voice. "We can't just toss him out. He's been with us for 14 years. Then a man's voice. "If you don't got the nerve, then pass him to me. I got no problem dumping him here." The woman. "Can't we just take him to the Humane Society? We can pay for them to put him to sleep." The man. "I ain't spending no money on this old worthless dog. We toss him out and that's final." Alba heard a car door open and felt herself being thrown onto the ground. She cried in frustration as the world became dark and she kept banging into a wall. And though the darkness and the wall did not allow her to advance, she still kept moving. Somehow her hand slipped off the dog and her eyesight returned. She shook her head and looked down at the tiny blind dog. "You poor little doggy," said Alba. "You're not ready to die, are you? You still got the will to live." Alba smiled when the dog wagged its tail. "That a boy," said Alba. "You got a right to be filled with hope, because guess what? I'm taking you home with me." She allowed the dog to sit on her lap and enjoy the fresh breeze as she drove with the window down. She felt a certain bond with the dog, as if she had known it since it was a puppy. The dog was family, and deserved the love of family, a love that would allow it to live out the rest of its life with dignity and care. But this love did not stop burning questions from racking her brain. Was she doing the right thing in bringing the dog home? Would it have been better to drop it off at the Humane Society, where people were more experienced with caring for dogs? What were her husband and children going to say? "Oh, you finally decided to get us a pet, and it's blind and old, and already has one paw in the grave. Way to go, Mom. Next time take us to the taxidermist and let us choose our own pet." When she arrived home, only her teenage son and daughter were in the kitchen. Her daughter was the first to see the little Chihuahua, and the expression on her daughter's face was one she expected. "OMG," said her daughter with a look of disgust. "Is that what I think it is?" "It's a little doggy," said Alba. "Say hello." "No, Mom," said her daughter. "It's a gross little rat. I don't even want to make eye contact. Why did you bring it here?" Her son appeared from behind the refrigerator door and chuckled. "Oh man, you steal that off a homeless man?" "Y'all are so cruel," said Alba, and then spoke tenderly into the dog's ear. "You don't pay any attention to these heartless teenagers. They'll learn to love you with time." "Mom," said her daughter, "I don't think it can hear you." "Yeah," said her son, "I think it's already dead." Alba swiveled the dog to face her. The dog's cloudy eyes were still open. "It looks alive to me," said Alba. "Poor little thing. I found it in an alley bumping into a fence, and I couldn't just let it die there. You would have done the same thing." "Honestly," said her daughter, "I would never pick up some strange animal off the street." "And what is Dad going to say?" said her son, now staring into the dog's eyes and waving his hand. "Is it completely blind?" "Obviously," said her daughter, "or else it would have barfed at the sight of your face." "Yes, I'm afraid it is completely blind," said Alba. "And I think your dad would support me. Which reminds me, I better call him and tell him to buy some dog food." Alba pressed on husband and speaker and waited for his voice. "Yes," said her husband over the phone line. "Honey," said Alba in her sweetest voice, "I need you to do me a favor." "What kind of favor?" said her husband. "I know this is going to sound strange," said Alba. "Not another trip to Mexico, is it?" said her husband. "No," said Alba. "I wish, but nothing like that." "Then what's the favor?" said her husband gruffly. "I need you to pick up some dog food," said Alba, hunching her shoulders, expecting a fight. "Dog food," said her husband, barely raising his voice. "Yes, dog food," said Alba. "Dog food," said her husband. "What in the heck for?" "Don't do it, Dad," shouted her daughter into the receiver. "Mom picked up some random mutt that's literally going to die before you get home." Alba pulled the phone away. "Letty's out of her mind. Pay no attention to her." "So why do we need dog food then?" said her husband. "Because Mom found some old Chihuahua and wants to keep it as a pet," said her son. "And the creepy little thing is completely blind," added her daughter. They heard the screech of skidding tires. Alba flinched and waited for a loud smack. Thank goodness there was none. "You okay?" said Alba. "I can't believe my ears," said her husband. "This all sounds crazy. Crazier than what you told me happened in Mexico. At least that was in your imagination. This is real." "I had no other choice," said Alba. "I couldn't leave him to die. I just couldn't. I felt this immediate bond with him. I felt his pain and his loss." "Sounds like it's better off being put to sleep," said her husband. "Why do you want it to keep suffering?" "This little guy's a fighter," said Alba. "He's not ready to sleep. With a little love and care, I know he will live the last days of his life with dignity. It's my mission to make sure he lives with dignity." "I still don't like the idea," said her husband. "We're with Dad," said her children. Alba frowned as she held the Chihuahua close to her and kissed the top of its head. "I really thought you would have had more compassion," said Alba. "But I can't force you all to do anything you don't want to do. I will take full responsibility of the little guy. I will feed him, bathe him, and clean up after him. All I ask is that you don't be cruel to him, and you don't do what his previous owners did to him. Abandon him and leave him to die alone." Alba stayed true to her word. She fed the Chihuahua, washed the dirt off its fur, fixed a little bed for it with old blankets, prayed over it, and cleaned whatever urine and poop it left on the living room floor. Her husband and children steered clear of the dog and walked around it any time it crossed their paths. She could not understand their hostility. The dog's presence brought a slight inconvenience to their lives, nothing drastic, nothing that sucked up their energy and time. It was one little dog, for Christ's sake. She wasn't building a shelter for homeless and sick pets. She wasn't becoming a crazy cat lady. She wasn't starting her own personal zoo. But fine, if that was the attitude they wanted to take, she could not stop them. At least she was carrying out her Christian duty by performing corporal works of mercy. And when she slept at night, she would sleep with a clear conscience. Early the next morning, she filled a bowl with dog food and another with water. She scooted the bowls closer to the dog's snout. She rubbed the dog's back and said, "I wish I could stay, but I have to work. You don't go wandering around too much, you hear. I don't want you getting hurt." Before she closed the front door, she took a long look at the dog and frowned. She wondered if it would be alive when she got back. She wondered if her kids would purposely let it out of the house. A strained smile spread across her face. "I have to think positive thoughts," she said. "The little guy's a fighter. He still has the will to live." She closed and locked the front door and walked to the driver's side of the car, her concentration focused on finding her keys in her purse. Just as her hand got hold of them, she dropped them on the concrete driveway. "Oh, my dear Lord," said Alba, eyes wide open. "What is going on here?" A pigeon with a broken wing waddled up to her ankle, and behind the pigeon a bloody dog limped and whimpered. And behind the dog, a raccoon with a torn face dragged itself along the concrete. Her son and daughter stepped out of the house, backpacks strapped to their bodies, ready to walk to the bus stop. Her daughter covered her mouth to keep from screaming. "Whoa," said her son. "I haven't seen a group this ugly since the chambelanes at Letty's quince." "Mom," said her daughter, flustered. "What did you do? Why did you bring all these animals to our house? What do they want?" Alba surveyed the creatures that stood before her, each emitting pain and sorrow in their eyes. She turned to her daughter and said, "Isn't it obvious? They want what others have not given them. They want compassion, and they want to live. Oh boy, do they want to live." "That still doesn't explain why they are in our driveway," said her daughter. Alba gently scooped up the pigeon and looked into its tiny eyes. "For some strange reason," said Alba, "they believe I can give them what they want." She handed the pigeon to her daughter, who put her hands up and refused it. "I'm out of here," said her daughter, who then rushed to her bus stop. Alba extended the pigeon to her son. He took it into his palms and nearly dropped it. "Careful now," said Alba. "We don't want to break it more than it already is." "What are we going to do with the rest of them?" said her son. "Good question," said Alba, noticing a jogger's appalled face from across the street. "We better get them in the backyard before the home association finds out." Alba called in sick to work, and she and her son and her husband spent the rest of the day tending to the broken animals as best as they could, cleaning cuts and bites, bandaging wounds, providing water and food. When they were stumped on what to do, her son searched Google for home remedies and medical procedures. "I hope none of them have rabies," said her husband. "That's why I insist on wearing gloves and masks," said Alba. She created resting stations in the garage with old blankets and old towels. Letty was forbidden to enter the garage to prevent her from having a nervous breakdown and from spreading the news to the neighborhood. Her son volunteered to watch over the animals through the night, but Alba told him he had to concentrate on school. He had done enough already. "I just hope they don't eat each other," said her son. "Don't worry," said Alba. "Me and your dad will keep an eye on them." "We will?" said her husband, caught off guard. "It's only for tonight," said Alba. "At least I hope so." Completely worn out by dinner time, her husband was kind enough to buy fried chicken for the family. She hoped to have a calm and relaxing meal. She hoped to have enough time to ponder the significance of the day. But somewhere outside the kitchen window, creatures howled and meowed and whimpered, all of them crying out for mercy. When Sarah's name was called, she walked out of the crowded waiting room and down the hallway and stopped to look at frames displaying the friendly faces of various doctors. Her primary physician was Dr. Sofia Garcia. Young and pretty, dark hair, inviting smile. She made sure never to have a doctor with a beard, especially a white beard. Dr. Garcia's nurse had called her and set up the appointment. A follow-up from her biopsy, a biopsy she didn't need, but after the mammogram showed something in her breast area, something that was not a cyst. She had to go through with it. She had not told Sunny or her sisters about the mammogram or biopsy. She didn't want to alarm anyone. She knew the results would be negative. She knew she had just spent money for nothing. She came from a healthy family with no history of diabetes, heart disease, or cancer. It was just swollen glands, she kept telling the doctor. Or maybe she hit herself under the arm and forgot about the injury. What made her see the doctor in the first place was the vision she had in Mexico. If it wasn't for that vision keeping her awake at night, she would have thought nothing about the lump. She hadn't told Sunny about the vision. She didn't want to appear crazy or superstitious. She didn't want to call unnecessary attention to herself. Living life as normal as possible was her #1 priority. Preparing breakfast, taking Jackie to school, running errands, washing clothes, tidying the living room, playing with Sammy, cooking dinner kept her busy. But all those household chores were not enough to keep the image of her frail body and the words, "You have cancer," from haunting her and pursuing her as she paced the house, even into the early morning hours. On several occasions, she found herself standing next to her children, gazing down at them as they slept, so small and beautiful, so worth living for. She couldn't bear the idea of abandoning them and leaving Sunny to raise them on his own. If anyone could raise them on their own and do it successfully, it would be Sunny. But she couldn't leave him with that burden. Her children needed her. She researched numerous Google sites on breast cancer, concentrating on survival rates, stages, and treatments, and the sites all said the same thing. Early detection would increase her survival rate and increase the success of treatments. She immediately made an appointment with her doctor, who had her get the mammogram and later the biopsy. Sarah sat on the exam table and shivered. She rubbed her arms and said, "Why does it have to be so cold?" A young nurse's assistant in blue scrubs tilted her head and said in the sweetest voice, "I'm so sorry, honey. I can let you borrow a sweater if that would help." "No bother," replied Sarah. "I'll be fine." "So let's get your vitals," said the assistant. The assistant put a thermometer in Sarah's mouth, clipped an oximeter to Sarah's index finger, and wrapped a black cuff around Sarah's bicep. Sarah grimaced when the cuff inflated and became too tight. Luckily, the tightness only lasted a few seconds. The assistant removed the thermometer, oximeter, and cuff, and said, "Everything looks normal." "That's what I keep telling myself," said Sarah. "Everything is normal." "Any questions for me?" said the assistant. "Not that I can think of," said Sarah. "Okay then," said the assistant. "Dr. Longoria will be in shortly to see you." "Doctor who?" said Sarah. "What happened to Dr. Garcia?" "We're so sorry," said the assistant. "Dr. Garcia had a family emergency, and so her associate will be covering for her today." "Maybe I should reschedule," said Sarah. "I really don't mind." "Oh, no," said the assistant. "Don't worry. Dr. Longoria will be in shortly." "Please don't let it be a bearded doctor. Please don't let it be a bearded doctor," said Sarah when left alone. After 10 anxious minutes of knocking her heels against the table, she heard a light courtesy tap at the door. For a second, she wanted to pounce on the door to keep it from opening. She should have done just that, because a white-bearded man entered the room with a smile. To keep from falling over, Sarah gripped the padded edges of the exam table and leaned back. "I'm Dr. Longoria. Dr. Garcia couldn't be here today." "I can reschedule, no problem. Really," said Sarah, already getting off the table. "That's not necessary," said Dr. Longoria. "Believe me, Dr. Garcia wanted to be here. She feels really bad. She didn't reschedule because she felt you needed to hear the results as soon as possible. It couldn't wait. Is your husband with you? A family member?" "I came on my own," said Sarah. She licked her upper lip in hopes of producing moisture in her mouth. "I think it's always better to have someone with you when you get this kind of news," said Dr. Longoria. "Please, doctor, just tell me what's wrong," said Sarah, clenching her fists. "As we suspected," said Dr. Longoria. "You do have breast cancer, and it seems to be an aggressive type." "What do you mean by aggressive?" said Sarah. "It seems to be spreading quite rapidly," said Dr. Longoria. "But you know, we have to stage the cancer first, which means sending you to a breast cancer specialist." "And what will they do?" said Sarah, and wondered if the exam table would open up and transport her onto an operating table. "They'll run lots of tests," said Dr. Longoria. "Maybe even perform surgery if they think it's needed. Once they stage it, they can decide which medicines and which treatments are best for you." "Perform surgery?" said Sarah. "You mean like cutting into my breast? Is that the only way?" "Modern medicine has so many ways of dealing with breast cancer these days," said Dr. Longoria. "You don't understand," said Sarah. "I have 2 small children and expect to see them through college." "We will do everything possible to get you there," said Dr. Longoria. "We will refer you to the best oncologist in town, and we will put together the best team to get you through this process." If Dr. Longoria was not a white-haired old man, Sarah would have punched him in the face. He was not even her real doctor. Why would he include himself in being part of her treatment? Why did he say, "We will do, and we will put together"? She would probably never see him again in her life. How she wanted to hurl insults at him. How she wanted to grab him by his collar and fling him into the hallway. Instead, she bowed her head and left the exam room in a stupor, in disbelief of the diagnosis, not knowing who to tell first, not knowing how to break the news to her family. Her fake doctor seemed hopeful, but that was his job, wasn't it? To offer fake optimism, to soften the pain, to keep a patient coming to the office to fill his pockets with money. Maybe she should get a second opinion. Maybe she should wait until Dr. Garcia returned. Maybe Dr. Longoria read the wrong medical file. He was pushing 70 after all, and he could have easily mixed up the files. Way to wallow in denial, she thought to herself. You asked him to show you the results, and your name stared you in the face. It still made no sense. How could the vision be coming true? She and her sisters concluded that what they saw was nothing more than a bad reaction to a chemical used in the mojigangas. They were idiots to take it seriously, and they shouldn't go around blabbing about it. But here she was, walking out of an exam room with the worst news of her life. Here she was forced to acknowledge that the mojiganga indeed showed her how her life would end. As she drove around the city, driving to no particular place, she kept seeing herself with no hair and with brown, rotting fingernails. She heard herself retching and screaming in pain. In her mouth she felt sores, and her tongue felt stale. Her skin turned yellow as she lay dying on a cold hospital bed. If she already knew her fate, what would be the use of taking all the medicines and suffering through all the treatments? Why go through a surgery? Why let them open her up? Nothing mattered from here on out, and she knew it. But for the meantime, she had to pretend everything was normal. She put on her best smile as she pulled into the driveway and saw Sonny playing frisbee with the kids. For the briefest of moments, she so badly wanted to put the car in reverse and drive to another city. Never great at feigning her happiness, she tightened her jaw and smiled until it hurt. Her children greeted her by wrapping their arms around her legs. "How are my fuzzy wubbies?" said Sarah playfully and embraced them. "Are y'all keeping Daddy busy?" "We're playing frisbee," said Jackie, "and Daddy always loses on purpose." "Naughty Daddy," said Sarah, glancing at Sonny, who tossed a frisbee in the air. "Naughty Daddy," repeated Sammy. Sonny approached her and gave her a peck on the cheek. "You up for a game of ultimate frisbee?" "Not today," said Sarah. "And how about a round of smooching?" said Sonny, putting his hands around her waist and pulling her close, and giving her 3 rapid pecks on the lips. Jackie covered her eyes, and Sammy imitated his sister. "Yucky," said Jackie. "Sonny, the kids are watching," said Sarah, breaking free. "We have our eyes closed," said Jackie, with Sammy repeating the words. "You see," said Sonny, "they have their eyes closed." "Not today," said Sarah in a melancholy tone. "Is something wrong?" said Sonny. "You don't look so well." The kids tilted their heads to get a better look at Sarah. Sarah felt their eyes on her, and the weight of their gaze was too heavy. She covered her mouth and rushed inside already in tears. 10 minutes must have passed when Sarah heard the bedroom door open. Feet shuffled across the carpet. She remained motionless with her face buried in a pillow. A warm hand lightly touched her back. "What's going on?" said Sonny softly. She wanted to tell him nothing was going on. She just had a bad day. A little alone time would get her in a better mood. She wanted to tell him she weighed herself and had gained 3 pounds. Something trivial like that. Something that evoked, "Don't feel bad, you still look beautiful to me." Something that didn't require decisions about life and death. She wanted to tell him she just realized she was the luckiest woman in the world, with a nice home, great husband, awesome children, and she couldn't handle the emotion. And that was the reason for the tears. But since she couldn't tell him any of those things, she stayed silent and under the pillow. "Honey, look at me," said Sonny, caressing her back. "I'm here for you. Everything's going to be okay." Those words didn't settle well in her soul and in her mind. How did he know everything was going to be okay? Could he see the future? Could he perform miracles? She turned on her side and said, "No, everything's not going to be okay. You can say it, doctors can say it, my family can say it, but I've already seen the outcome. and there is no miraculous ending. "What are you talking about?" said Sunny, now standing. Sarah sat up on the edge of their queen-sized bed, with the pillow on her lap. "Why did you mention doctors?" said Sunny. Staring down at the light brown carpet, Sarah said, "Where are the kids?" "They're watching a movie," said Sunny. "Do you want me to get them?" "No!" shouted Sarah, grabbing Sunny's arm. "Not yet." "So are you going to tell me what's going on?" said Sunny. "Because I'm getting really nervous, like maybe I don't want to know." "I wish to God you didn't have to know," said Sarah. "I wish it was something I could shield you and the kids from. I wish—" "Sarah, just tell me already," insisted Sunny. "I saw the doctor today," said Sarah calmly. "Actually, I've already had 3 appointments. Not sure if you've seen the debit statements and the copays." "I didn't really pay attention," said Sunny. "So, why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to alarm you," said Sarah. "We always said there'd be no secrets between us." "I know, and I'm sorry," said Sarah. "I should have told you, because I really needed you there. I'm here now." Sunny sat next to her and placed his warm hand over her shivering fingers. "Please tell me what the doctor said." Sarah released a heavy sigh. "He said I have breast cancer." Sunny turned away and gathered his thoughts, leaving Sarah feeling anxious and digging her left thumb into her right palm. She did not like him turning away. She did not like his silence. "And he's positive?" said Sunny finally. "What tests did they run? How did they come to that conclusion?" "I got a mammogram and a biopsy," said Sarah, "and the results were positive. Now I'm being sent to a specialist so they can see what stage I'm in." "And he didn't have any idea how advanced it is?" said Sunny. "Just said it seemed to be an aggressive type," said Sarah. "What a thing to say if he's not even a specialist," said Sunny. "If he doesn't really know." "Maybe he's trying to make me take it seriously," said Sarah. "I don't appreciate him saying something like that," said Sunny. "Seems unprofessional to me." "Well, he wasn't my real doctor," explained Sarah. "Dr. Garcia was out on a family emergency. Somebody else filled in for her, some Dr. Longoria." "Make sure to give him 0 stars," said Sunny. Sarah looked solemnly into Sunny's brown eyes. "Sunny, don't ask me how I know this, but I don't think I'm going to survive this." Devoured by his embrace, Sarah wept on his chest. "Of course you're gonna survive," said Sunny, stroking her long black hair. "We're gonna fight this thing, you and me, like always." He released her and lifted her chin. "You're gonna be one of those proud women wearing a pink ribbon. Me and the kids are gonna cheer you on through the treatments and the bad days. We're gonna be with you every step of the way." Sarah smiled. "I know without a doubt that you will be with me, but I will not be counted among the survivors." "What makes you so certain?" said Sunny. "I've heard countless survivor stories. Remember my Aunt Terry? She got through it at age 60. And remember my cousin Bertha? She was in stage 3 and got both breasts removed and is still living strong." "I'm just 32, Sunny. Would you really want a wife with no breasts for the rest of your life?" "That wouldn't matter," said Sunny. "I'm pretty sure it would matter," said Sarah. "You're a man. Men love breasts." "I am a man," said Sunny, "but a man who loves something more important than breasts. I love you. I love my wife no matter how she looks. And you can't just think of what I want. You have Jackie and Sammy. You have to fight for them." "I'm scared," said Sarah, resting her head on his chest. I'm scared I won't make the right decision." "Choosing life is always the right decision," said Sunny. "What if life doesn't choose me?" said Sarah. "We just have to believe it will," said Sunny, kissing her forehead. "We just have to believe it will." The kids burst in and jumped on the bed and over their backs. "Is the movie already over?" said Sunny, hunched over with Jackie clinging to his neck, her legs wrapped around his waist. "Ice cream!" shouted Sammy, hanging onto Sarah's back, his skinny legs dangling straight down. "Mommy's not feeling well," said Sunny. "Maybe another day." "If they want ice cream, then let's get them ice cream," said Sarah. "Then it sounds like we're all going to Dairy Queen," said Sunny. "Hooray!" shouted the kids. "Hooray!" said Sarah softly, her family unable to recognize the profound whimper in her voice. While Sarah was put on a waiting list to see the breast specialist, Sunny researched breast cancer like it was his college thesis. He rattled off all the different types and the different treatments and relayed countless survivor stories well past Sarah's bedtime. "Do you feel any swelling?" he asked on a nightly basis. "Is there any redness? Any nipple discharge?" Though she said no to all the symptoms, he had to see for himself. "I think you just want a peek," she said, obliging by lifting her pajama top. He cupped her breasts and gently played with them. "Still soft and round and perky," said Sunny. "Are you satisfied?" said Sarah. "Can I go to sleep now?" Sunny shook his head. "I think I missed a spot." And before Sarah knew it, they were both naked and lost in passionate lovemaking. Sunny seemed intent on creating beautiful memories for her and their family. In case she died, the kids would have wonderful memories of their mother. That must have been his reasoning, according to Sarah. At first, she did not mind visiting the San Antonio Zoo, the Houston Aquarium, and a drive-through safari. Sarah did her best to smile on the outings, but she couldn't get the visions about her oncoming death out of her mind. In the end, she believed her children would forget about the elephants and hippos. They would have no recollection of feeding the slimy manta rays and allowing the llamas to eat off their hands. In the end, they would only remember her as a mother in pain, with no hair, with rotten skin, so miserable, so powerless, so weak. So when Sunny told her they should go to the beach, she flat out refused. "What for?" said Sarah. "Just to go," said Sunny. "You don't want to go? We haven't been to South Padre since we were newlyweds. I'm sure the kids would enjoy it." "I don't see any point in going," said Sarah. "The kids are little. They'll probably forget they even went." "We'll take pictures," said Sunny. "We'll make an album for them." "An album for when I'm gone?" said Sarah. "That's not what I meant," said Sunny. "Look, I appreciate you trying to make these memories," said Sarah. "I really do. But none of this is going to matter. We need to be saving money. That's what we should be doing. I seriously doubt all these procedures and treatments are going to be cheap. That's something they don't tend to mention on those breast cancer pages. But I looked it up. And you know what I found? $100,000 to $200,000. Do we got a couple $100,000 lying around somewhere? And for what? So maybe I can live a few more years before the cancer returns. And then we gotta fork over another $100,000. "Money's not important," said Sunny. "We'll get by like everyone else. Besides, we got good insurance. We'll start a GoFundMe if needed." "By me living and spending all this money on treatments," said Sarah, "our kids will have to suffer and go without going to a good school. Go without having the best clothes, the best vacations, the best university. I'd rather have them go without all those things than have them go without the best mother, said Sonny. Just then, Sarah's cell phone rang. She answered. The specialist's office. They can fit me in on Thursday, she told Sonny. At what time? Said Sonny. 2 p.m., said Sarah. Tell them we'll be there, said Sonny. Sonny hugged her and thanked God there was an opening and made arrangements with his sister to care for the kids and called his work to take off. His smile and his eyes sparkled with new hope, which filled Sarah with guilt. How could she tell him? How could she explain to him that she didn't intend to keep the appointment? There was no point in spending the money and going through the pantomime that she would be healed, and they would be one happy family for years to come. She heard him calling his mother and telling her the specialist would see Sarah next week. He knew in his heart good news was headed their way. He knew Sarah would get through this, and everyone just had to keep praying. How could she tell him he was wrong? How could she tell him prayers were useless and her destiny was already determined? In the end, she couldn't tell him. She didn't have the nerve to shatter his hopes. Instead, she texted Alba and told her if they could meet somewhere. Alba sent her an address she was not familiar with. 2021 East 2nd Street. Be there at 6 p.m. Sarah followed directions from Google Maps and got there 5 minutes early. As she parked next to the sidewalk, she didn't recognize the small house with yellow paint and white trimming. She wondered why Alba would want to meet here. A small concrete porch with rusty railing caught her eye. This was an old neighborhood. Maybe the house belonged to an old person. Alba pulled up behind her and approached her window. She waved and motioned for Sarah to step out. The first thing Sarah noticed was Alba completely dressed in white blouse, white pants, even white tennis shoes. The only things missing were the halo and the wings. "Whose place is this?" said Sarah. "It belongs to Mrs. Arriaga," said Alba. "Doesn't ring a bell," said Sarah. "It's so good to see you," said Alba, standing on the sidewalk. "We haven't seen each other since Mexico. How long has that been? 6 weeks." "At least," said Sarah. "I've been busy." "Same here," said Alba. "But now you're here live and in person. So what did you need to see me about?" Sarah had sworn Sonny to secrecy. He couldn't tell her sisters or her parents about the cancer until she knew what stage she was in. They would blow things out of proportion and make things worse. They would probably take her back to San Miguel and make the man reverse any witchcraft he had done on her. Though he told Sonny to not say anything, she could no longer hold back the truth. "I got cancer." Just like that she broke the news, without easing into it, without any subtle hints. Just like that, a great weight rolled off her shoulders. "That can't be," said Alba, shaking her head in disbelief. "Nobody in our family has had cancer. Not our grandparents, not our parents, nobody. What kind of cancer are we talking about?" "Breast cancer," said Sarah, "and I'm pretty sure it's stage 4. "You sure about this?" said Alba. "You've had tests already? You've seen doctors?" Sarah nodded. "I've seen enough." Alba still shaking her head. "But you're too young. It's not fair. Do Mom and Dad know?" "Not yet," said Sarah. "I don't even know how to break the news to them." "I'll come with you if you need me," said Alba. "Just don't tell them anything, okay?" said Sarah. "The news has to come from me. Understand?" I understand, said Alba. Just don't wait too long. They have to know. So Mom can start her novenas. There's nothing more powerful than a mother's prayers. If the vision from Mexico is coming true, said Sarah, which I think it is, then prayers may not help at all. If I remember correctly, said Alba, you said you saw yourself dying, but you didn't see yourself actually die. Isn't that right? So that means there's still hope. Maybe you don't die. I'm pretty sure I die, said Sarah. Stage 4 is the worst stage to be in. Sarah accepted Alba's tight embrace and a kiss on the cheek. I'm so sorry, little sister. How is Sonny taking this? You know Sonny, said Sarah, now standing apart from Alba. He's optimistic. He's trying to be strong. He says we'll fight this and I'll get through it. But he's wrong, and I don't know how to prepare him and the kids for what's coming. I'm with Sonny on this one, said Alba. You will get through it. But you have to be a fighter. You have to stand up against this disease. In the name of Jesus, I can take you to healing services, have people pray over you. I don't think that would do any good, said Sarah. You don't think so? Said Alba. No, I really don't, said Sarah. Alba glanced at the house on 2nd Street and back at Sarah. If you have time, said Alba, I'd like to show you someone special. Alba took Sarah's hand and led her up the concrete porch. Alba tapped on the door. A gray-haired, heavy-set man, probably in his 60s, opened the door and gave a weak smile. Please come in. My mother's been waiting. Sarah was introduced, and the man welcomed her. Alba and Sarah were led to Mrs. Arriaga's small bedroom, where a frail woman in her 80s sat propped up by pillows on a reclining chair. The silver-haired woman's tiny face brightened when Alba walked into the room. Mira no más, said Mrs. Arriaga, looking at her son. Who is this? Is she my daughter? She's Alba, said her son in a loud voice. Remember Alba? She comes to bathe you and change you. Alba, said Mrs. Arriaga. I don't remember a daughter named Alba. Why does she have to bathe me? I don't need anyone to bathe me. What I need is food. Tengo hambre. The son shook his head and turned to Alba and Sarah. She just ate dinner. Alba, said Mrs. Arriaga, can you find me my shoes and take me to IHOP? You just had dinner, said the son. We just ate caldo de pollo. Caldo? I don't want any caldo, said Mrs. Arriaga. I want IHOP. Alba's not taking you to IHOP, said the son, frustrated. She's here to bathe you. Maybe we can eat after your bath, said Alba. I'll be outside if you need me, said the son, scratching the back of his neck and taking a pack of Winstons from his shirt pocket. When left alone with Mrs. Arriaga, Sarah asked, When did you start volunteering? A couple of weeks ago, said Alba from the bathroom, talking over the sound of gushing water. It all began in a strange way. Strange, said Sarah. How so? I found a blind old chihuahua in an alley, said Alba. Poor thing was abandoned by his owner. It kept banging into a fence. Most people would have probably left it to die. I just couldn't. I took him home, fed him, held him. Now he looks stronger and more alive. Sure, he's still blind, but now he's surrounded by love and living with dignity. And that's not the strangest thing. What do you mean? Said Sarah, keeping an eye on Mrs. Arriaga, who just stared into space. Suddenly, other animals showed up on my driveway, said Alba. I'm talking cats, birds, raccoons, squirrels. There were so many I had to hide them in the backyard and in our storage unit. That's the craziest thing I ever heard, said Sarah. And to this day, said Alba, I have no idea why they came to me. What did your family say? Said Sarah. They must have been a little freaked out. You know Letty, said Alba. Everything is gross to her. Everything upsets her. She was no help. But thank goodness Ernest and Jonathan got on board. They went out and bought food and medical supplies and helped me tend to all the broken animals. We must have served the whole neighborhood because at some point the animals stopped coming. That must have been a relief, said Sarah, wondering when Alba was going to stop the water from gushing. You better believe it, said Alba. But once they stopped showing up, I felt an emptiness in my soul, like something was missing in my life. I don't know what it was, but it kept me up at night and kept me looking out of the windows. One morning, I saw an old woman going down the sidewalk with a walker, carrying bags of groceries. Cars passed her by. Joggers ran around her. I couldn't believe that no one had the decency to stop and help her. Some strange energy took over my mind and my body and propelled me to go out and assist her. As I carried her bags and escorted her to her house, I suddenly felt the desire to serve the elderly and the sick. And you like it? Said Sarah. I love it, said Alba, finally turning off the water and poking her head out of the bathroom. I feel like it's my calling, to tend to these little old folks, to sit with them, to pray over them, to help out their families for a few hours. Take Mrs. Arriaga, for example. She was literally in the hospital on her deathbed. Something came over me as I stood next to her. This something told me to place my hand over her heart and to say a special prayer. A few hours later, her son phoned me and told me the doctors were releasing her to go home. That sounds nice, said Sarah. I'm glad she recovered, but to be honest, she's still suffering. I mean, look at her. She can't even take care of herself. And I'm sure her son isn't too happy that he still has to be the one watching over her every day. Are you saying that because she's a burden, we should just let her die? Said Alba, stepping out of the bathroom. I don't know what I'm saying, said Sarah. Maybe she's like the blind Chihuahua, said Alba. She's stopped by a wall and lost in the darkness, but she keeps moving. She keeps fighting to live. Seems depressing, said Sarah. I couldn't handle seeing so much suffering on a daily basis. You'd be surprised at what you could handle, said Alba. But you don't take their sadness home with you to your own family, said Sarah. I don't focus on the sadness or the pain, said Alba. I focus on the time we are sharing, on the spiritual bond we are creating, on the life we are living. Alba hoisted Mrs. Arriaga from her chair with great delicacy. Sarah reached out her hand to help, but pulled it back almost immediately. Mrs. Arriaga looked too soft and frail, and Sarah did not want to break her. "Who are you?" said Mrs. Arriaga, as Alba walked her to the bathroom. "I'm Alba. I'm here to bathe you." "You're such an angel," said Mrs. Arriaga, touching Alba's cheek. Sarah followed them to the bathroom, but stayed by the door and refused to look inside. "Would you like to help me?" said Alba. "It would do you good. Get your mind off the cancer." "I'm fine out here," said Sarah through a slim opening in the door. "In fact, I probably should be going. Sonny's going to be wondering about me." Alba poked out her head. "I will be praying for you and Sonny and the kids." "Thanks, I guess," said Sarah. "You might want to consider maybe God sent you that vision," said Alba, keeping an eye on Mrs. Arriaga seated on the toilet. "Maybe it was his way of saying, 'Sarah, wake up before it's too late.'" Too late for what? Said Sarah with a scowl. You were never good at enjoying yourself, even as a kid, said Alba, keeping a hand on Mrs. Arriaga's shoulder. You never joined us in singing, in dancing, in games. Maybe God is saying it's time for a change. Go out and play with the kids. Do karaoke. Go skating. Go zip lining. Go dancing with Sonny. I mean, you didn't even dance with him at your own wedding. Did you really have to bring that up? Said Sarah. It's a decision I regret every day of my life. That was painful to watch, said Alba. I mean really painful. We had to drag you out of the bathroom in your wedding dress. You remember that? Sarah remembered. She had hid herself in the bathroom of the Onion Creek ballroom once dinner was served, and once her parents began pressuring her to do the traditional waltz. A sudden urge to puke overwhelmed her, so she rushed to the toilet and bent over the bowl. Thankfully, nothing came out. But the nausea remained, so much so that she wanted to stay close to the sink, in case her brisket decided it didn't like being in her gurgling stomach. Patting off the drops of sweat from her forehead, she looked at herself in the mirror and felt ashamed. What's wrong with you? She kept telling herself. Get out there and dance with your husband. Just one freaking dance, for Christ's sake. She paced back and forth from the bathroom stalls to the closed door, trying to muster the courage to go out and face the public. She must have been away too long, for her two sisters and her mother pushed open the door and shook their heads in disapproval. Válgame Dios, said her mother. Everyone is waiting for you. We need you out on the dance floor this very instant. I can't do it, said Sarah. Please don't make me do it. Are you telling me you're not doing the father and daughter dance? Said Alba, crossing her arms over her chest. Because if you are telling me that, I want my money back for the photographer I paid for. Girl, you better get out there right now, said Lolita. Daddy needs this dance. You're the last daughter he's giving away because I ain't ever getting married, that's for sure. You have to at least dance with Sonny, said Alba. You're not a little girl anymore, said her mother. You're a married woman now, and married women dance with their fathers and their husbands. I'll dance with them in private, said Sarah, just not in front of all those people. Those people are your family and our friends, said her mother. Yeah, our friends, said Lolita, because Sarah don't got any. Tú cállate. Their mother gave Lolita a hard shove. We'll tell everyone to close their eyes if that makes you feel better, said Alba. How come you don't say anything to Alba? Said Lolita to their mother. I want all of us out there right now, demanded their mother. We didn't pay for this ballroom just to stay stuck inside the bathroom. Alba pulled Sarah back into the present moment by asking, And what was that weird gringo song Sonny played? Dance Me to the End of Love, said Sarah, by Leonard Cohen. Yeah, that one, said Alba. What kind of Tejano in their right mind would choose that song? Listen to the lyrics, said Sarah. It's a great song. Poor Sonny, continued Alba. He pulled you out on the dance floor. And we all cheered. At last, you would have the dance you never dared to do with us. He held you in his arms. He looked so hopeful as the music started. Then you pulled away and rushed back to your seat. We all tried to drag you back, but you refused. We booed and called you so many names. It was Sonny who said, Let her be. If she doesn't feel comfortable, we can't force her. She's still the love of my life, whether she dances or not. A day doesn't go by where I wish I would have danced with him, and with Dad, said Sarah. "I can't change the past, as much as I would like to." "But you can change the present," said Alba. "Maybe God is helping you see how precious life is. Live it to its fullest. Do things you've never done before. Make life-giving connections. It is those connections that will be the bridge for you and your loved ones when you cross over into eternity." "It seems I'll be crossing that bridge very soon," said Sarah. "You shouldn't think that way," said Alba. "Go to the doctors, get the treatments and the meds, live as long as you can. You got all our support." "Who are you?" said Mrs. Arriaga. "I better let you tend to Mrs. Arriaga," said Sarah. "I'll call you later." Sarah was about to leave the small bedroom when Alba stepped out and said, "And don't think for 1 second that I'm going to let you miss your appointments. Don't even think about it. This time I will drag you by your hair if necessary." Sarah gave a fake smile and left without a word. She got into her car and slapped her steering wheel. Alba was never going to be on her side. She should have known that from the get-go. Now it was Alba and Sunny pushing her into treatment, and Alba and Sunny would soon recruit her parents and her in-laws. Sarah needed someone on her side, someone who could clearly see what needed to be done. She needed Lolita. She immediately dialed her number. "What's up, sis?" said Lolita after 3 rings. "I need to see you," said Sarah. "Right now?" said Lolita. "If possible," said Sarah. "I got some time away from Sunny and the kids." "Is it like an emergency?" said Lolita. "Kind of," said Sarah. "I'm at the hospital," said Lolita, "so I don't know if you want to meet me here or wait until I get home in the evening." "Hospital?" said Sarah. "What are you doing there?" "I can't talk about it over the phone," said Lolita. "But you're okay, right?" Sarah said. "You're not injured, are you?" "Oh, I'm fine," said Lolita. "Never been better." "I was scared for a moment," said Sarah. "So what's it going to be?" said Lolita. "The hospital or my place?" "I guess the hospital," said Sarah. When Sarah saw Lolita in the lobby of the hospital, she did a triple take and wanted to hide behind the nearest ficus tree. Her cheeks turned bright red with embarrassment. She didn't even want to speak to her. "It's me, sis," said Lolita. "They let you walk around like that?" said Sarah, avoiding eye contact with people passing by. "What do you mean?" said Lolita. "I mean, do they let you walk around like that?" said Sarah. Lolita wore a flowing black dress, and covering her chest and shoulders was a black shawl, which boasted of bright embroidered pink and purple roses. She carried a bouquet of yellow sunflowers, centered over her bosom. Burgundy roses crowned her head and stood out against her long raven locks. Her eyes and nose were shaded black, made more vivid by the white cream covering the rest of her face. To complete the ensemble, thin strips of black were etched vertically down her lips, made to look like teeth. "What's wrong with the way I'm dressed?" said Lolita. "I would think you might scare the patients," said Sarah. "Not the patients I see," said Lolita. "They actually welcome me with open arms." "Does Alba know about this?" said Sarah. "Know about what?" said Lolita. "About how you're dressing nowadays," said Sarah. "What would it matter?" said Lolita. "For the first time in my life, I finally feel free to be myself. Like maybe I found my calling." "Your calling is to go around dressed like a skeleton," said Sarah. "Of course not," said Lolita. "It's something deeper and more meaningful. Would you like to see?" Sarah reluctantly followed Lolita to the elevator, doing her best to have her face tilted away from the people who looked at them with shock. "You shouldn't be embarrassed," said Lolita, pressing the button for the 4th floor. "Death is a part of life." "Believe me, I know," said Sarah. "That's why I came to see you." They allowed people to gasp and scurry out of the elevator. Once the doors shut and they began their ascent, Lolita said, "I'm listening." "I have cancer," said Sarah, "and I know I'm not going to survive it." "Because of the vision," said Lolita. "I got tests done, and they confirmed what I saw and felt inside the mojiganga," said Sarah. The doors spread open, and they stepped out. "I'm thinking we will all be experiencing some kind of confirmation," said Lolita. "Confirmation that the visions are becoming a reality. Take me, for example. When I got back from Mexico, one night I heard scratching at my door and a terrible pain-filled meow. I opened the door, and there was a cat all beaten up, ears covered in blood. At first I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do? But once I touched her and felt her pain and sickness, a connection formed between us." "Have you talked to Alba?" said Sarah. "No, why?" said Lolita. "When you get a chance, call her up," said Sarah. "You both have a lot to talk about." "Anyhow, after the cat, a sick dog showed up," said Lolita. "And then other cats and other dogs, all of them whimpering, all of them suffering. When I held them close to my body, I instantly knew what they came for. They all wanted to stop suffering. They all wanted to rest." "So, you took them to the Humane Society?" said Sarah. "Let's just say I put them to sleep," said Lolita. Sarah didn't feel like asking for details. She walked in silence down the quiet hallway of the hospice unit, where empty rolling beds leaned against the wall, and nurses came in and out of rooms, and melancholy-looking family members whispered into their phones, probably giving bad news. A female nurse stopped and looked Lolita over. "I like your outfit," said the nurse. "Thank you," said Lolita. "The family said you'd be coming," said the nurse, "and not to be weirded out. But I don't see anything weird about your costume. Looks pretty cool if you ask me." "You see," said Lolita when the nurse had gone, "people with an open mind always welcome me." "So why are you even here?" said Sarah. "Why didn't you stick to animals?" "Well, soon after the animals appeared," continued Lolita, "I got a call from a friend that her mother was in the hospital, completely destroyed by Alzheimer's, no longer able to speak or do anything. She just lay there, not responding to her voice or to her touch. She seemed to be in so much pain. And that's when it hit me. My friend's mother needed my services. She needed a mercy that no one dared to provide." "I hope you're not saying what I think you're saying," said Sarah, as Lolita stopped in front of room 421. "I convinced my friend and her family to take their mother off life support," said Lolita. "Oh, I was worried for a minute," said Sarah. In a low voice, Lolita said, "But when I saw that she was basically dying of hunger and thirst, I had to intervene. I had never been so alive until I helped this woman seep into her eternal slumber." Sarah covered her mouth. "Why are you telling me this? I shouldn't be hearing this. You could go to prison. I could go to prison if I don't turn you in." "Just like the families didn't turn me in," said Lolita. "You won't turn me in." "Families," said Sarah. "You mean there's more?" They stepped into the room to find a man on a bed, a man whose breathing seemed to stop and then return with a cough. "We're talking about terminal patients," said Lolita. "People on the verge of dying. They are no longer hooked up to machines or IVs. They are basically starving to death. Either their families don't want to let them go, or their spirits are too attached to their bodies. I touch them, you see." Lolita touched the man's arm, and her face took on a look of anguish. She released the arm with a desperate gasp for air. "They want to move on," said Lolita. "They're so ready." Lolita caressed the man's cheek and looked lovingly upon him. "I can't leave them this way, so by some strange power within me, I seep into their unconsciousness, cut off enough attachments and enough connections to this world that they are able to move on. Sometimes it takes minutes, sometimes hours. Sometimes I am cutting off memories of trauma. Sometimes I am cutting off fear, anger, or sadness." "And love?" said Sarah. "It is never love," said Lolita. "True love always releases when it is time. It never keeps a spirit tied down." "With the first animals, I was not able to do this. But as the power grew stronger, I no longer needed to physically stop their breathing." "I'm still not sure this is right," said Sarah. Lolita put her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "I feel your fear. We both know what's ahead. I wish you would have come to me first, because Alba has probably filled your head with false hopes. We both know the survival rate of your stage of cancer is very low." "That's what I tried to tell her," said Sarah. "But she started talking about God, that maybe God sent me this vision so I could live life to the fullest." "God?" said Lolita. "The same God who is cutting your life short, but somehow wants you to live a full life? This is a crappy way of giving you a message. I think Alba's seen too many episodes of Touched by an Angel." "So what do I do?" said Sarah. "I don't think you need me to tell you," said Lolita. "I think you already know your decision." "After hearing both you and Alba today," said Sarah, "it's obvious that the visions in Mexico are coming true. And that means my fate is sealed. Soon I will be gone. So I don't see any need in going through with all these procedures. You know what I mean?" "I know exactly what you mean," said Lolita. "Don't worry, sis. I will be ready when the time comes." "I don't want to leave my family in massive debt," said Sarah. "In this country you die two ways, physically and financially." "I suppose the next step is one of the hardest," said Lolita. "Preparing Sonny and the kids for what is to come." Sarah stayed silent and fixated her gaze on the dying man. "When the suffering becomes unbearable," said Lolita, "let me be the one who helps you move on. No need to suffer more than you have to." "What do we tell Sonny and Alba?" said Sarah. "We don't need to tell them anything," said Lolita. "It will be done when no one is around." Lolita put a giant sunflower in Sarah's hand and said, "You will die with dignity. That is my promise to you." Sarah smelled the sunflower and stepped out of the room. Before she got to the end of the hallway, she crumpled over and wept. She couldn't believe she was going behind Sonny's back and making plans without his input. Up until the incident in Mexico, she had always been honest with him and had never hidden anything from him. Now here she was making decisions without him, decisions about life and death, decisions that would impact their family forever. She wiped the tears from her eyes and noticed a white substance had smeared on her fingers. "What is this?" said Sarah. She peered into the reflection of a glass on a picture frame. The face of a Katrina stared back at her, causing her to let out a scream which she instantly muffled with her hand. She rushed to the nearest bathroom to look into a real mirror. A sigh of relief escaped her mouth when she saw her own face, no hint of white makeup anywhere on her skin. "Sonny," she said into the mirror, I'm so sorry I didn't dance with you on our wedding day. I'm so sorry I was not that freewheeling fun wife you deserved. I'm even more sorry that I will be leaving you and the kids, and there's nothing you or I can do about it. Oh, Sonny." She released a cry for mercy that drifted like a puff of smoke into her reflection in the mirror. Her reflection turned into a giant head with a giant mouth, a mouth that opened wide and inhaled her cry and inhaled her hope. Thank God someone entered the bathroom, or else she would have allowed her body and soul to be swallowed whole. Sarah sat in Sunday Mass, Sonny seated on her right and her children on her left. She had no idea why she decided to attend Mass. They tended to skip most Sundays, too lazy to get out of bed and too far from First Communion to care. Maybe it was to find solace. Maybe it was to request a miracle. Maybe it was to muster enough courage to talk to Sonny and her children about her plans. As the Mass proceeded, and as she stared at the huge crucifix behind the altar, questions bombarded her mind, drowning out the scriptures and the sermon and the prayers. Why, Lord, did you send me to Mexico? Why the vision? Why the cancer? Why the taking me away from my husband and children? Is this all part of your cosmic plan? Am I even significant enough to be part of the plan? Am I important enough to be granted a miracle? Life and death are before me, Jesus. Do I have any say in which one I choose? Or is it already chosen for me? Can't I just sit this one out? Can't I be that weird girl who refuses to dance, refuses to sing, refuses to die? Suddenly she found herself alone in the pews. Sonny and the kids were gone. Everyone was gone. No congregation, no choir, no altar servers. Instead of the priest standing on the altar steps, the old woman Mojiganga floated in his place. The giant head with its giant grotesque eyes and giant grotesque grin nodded and seemed to be saying, "Yes, that's right. Your time is up. You are coming with me." And before Sarah could move, the Katrina and the angel sandwiched her in. "You're not going anywhere," was their message. The Katrina pulled on her left arm, and the angel pulled on her right. Sarah fought hard to escape their grasp. She did not want to go with either of them. She wanted to sit still and just be. The old woman floated toward her and descended upon her body. Just as the bottom of the old woman's dress brushed against her hair, Sarah leapt forward and tumbled over the pew in front of her. She scrambled out of the pew and into the center aisle, the puppets on her tail. Darting to her right, she dodged the Katrina. Darting to her left, she escaped the angel. She fled to the corner of the church and curled up in a ball at the base of a statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The giant puppets with their giant evil grins hovered over her and closed in on her trembling body. A voice filled the church. "You stopped dancing. You need to keep moving. You have gotten stuck, and only movement will bring you out of the darkness." "Honey," said Sonny, snapping Sarah out of the vision. "It's our turn for communion. Do you need help?" "Sorry," said Sarah, lifting herself off her knees. "I can manage." She scooted Jackie and Sammy in front of her and gladly moved into the communion line. After Mass, Sonny talked her into eating at Jalisco's, their favorite Mexican restaurant. She dipped a few chips into a bowl of chili con queso and slowly crunched on them, while her children devoured the queso as if they hadn't eaten queso in years, leaving yellow dribble all over the table and on their clothes. Eye contact with Sonny and her children was kept to a minimum. Life was still normal for them, Enjoying food and enjoying each other's company still meant the world to them. But not for long. Soon she would sit them in their living room. Soon she would break the news of her sickness. Soon she would tell them their lives would never be the same. When she barely touched her enchiladas, Sunny asked, "Are you feeling okay?" She picked at her food with a fork and said, "I'm not that hungry, that's all." "Mummy's sad," said Jackie, catching Sarah off guard. "Sad?" said Sunny. "We ate all the queso," said Jackie, "and didn't leave her any." "I've got plenty of queso in these enchiladas," said Sarah, slicing into the tortillas and taking a hearty bite. "You see, Mummy's happy now." "Mummy's sad," said Sammy, late to the conversation. Sarah ate all the enchiladas, bit by bit, to prove just how happy Mummy was. When she could no longer shove food down her throat, she excused herself and fled to the restroom. All the happiness spilled into the toilet, a happiness drenched in a green, chunky sauce. Sarah spent the drive home pretending to read her list of suggested articles while her children listened to Barney songs. Words glared up at her, but they were not the words running through her mind. "Sunny, I am not going through with the treatments." No, she couldn't be that blunt. "Sunny, as you know, I have cancer, and yes, many people have survived, including people from your family, but many people have also died. Weighing the pros and cons, I have come to the conclusion that the treatments and medicines would be a burden on our family's financial security." "Hold on. Before you say anything, let me elaborate." Maybe that was going overboard. And what would she elaborate on? Would she reveal all the details about the mojiganga incident? Would she tell him what she saw and what is now coming true? Sunny would justifiably call her crazy for basing her decisions on a vision from Mexico. Sunny would threaten to tell her parents to have a good talk with her and bring her back to her senses. For this very reason, Sarah invited her sisters to the house for moral support, for verification that the visions were coming true, not only for Sarah, but also for them. Upon entering the driveway, Sarah gave a sigh of relief. She did not think they would show up, but thankfully, Alba stood on the front porch, and Lolita pulled in behind them. She didn't have to face Sunny and the kids alone. "I haven't seen your sisters in a good while," said Sunny, turning off the car. "Is there some family get-together I don't know about?" Sarah stared out of her window and said nothing, and that must have been enough to give Sunny the answer. "You told them, didn't you?" said Sunny. Sarah nodded. "I'm so glad," said Sunny, touching Sarah's arm. "I didn't know how much longer I could keep it from your family. They needed to know." As Sunny grabbed the door handle, he was caught off guard by a tap on the window. He turned and shouted, "Ah!" Jackie shouted, "Ah!" And Sammy pointed and said, "Coco!" "It's only Aunt Lolita," said Sarah, releasing her seatbelt. "She still thinks it's Halloween." Over the initial shock, Sunny gained his composure, sat up straight, waved, and stepped out of the car. "I didn't recognize you," said Sunny, trying to focus on Lolita's face and not give her a complete look-over. Alba was not so subtle. "What is all this?" said Alba, circling Lolita. "Dia de los Muertos is long over." "Can I dress like Aunt Lolita?" said Jackie, now out of the car. "You most certainly cannot," said Alba. "Wings and a halo are what you should be wearing." Lolita pulled Jackie close to her and gave her a warm hug. "Jackie can wear whatever she wants," said Lolita. "Well, not whatever she wants," said Sunny. "We'll stick with princess costumes for now," said Sarah. Alba shook her head and looked at Lolita up and down. I don't know what to say. I'm in shock. Let's just let her be, said Sarah. Just tell me one thing, said Alba. Tell me you don't go to work in this. Tell me you don't sleep in this get-up. Lolita grinned. Alba threw up her arms. This is insane, said Alba. Someday someone's going to mistake you for a corpse and toss you into the morgue. Now that I look at you, I'm thinking maybe you did suffer some sort of brain damage back in Mexico. Maybe you need to see a doctor or a therapist. I wouldn't be talking, said Lolita. Look at you all dressed in white like you belong to some cult. Do me a favor and stay away from the Kool-Aid. Maybe we should go inside, said Sunny, noticing neighbors staring at Lolita. Sunny's right, added Sarah, nudging Lolita toward the front door. Let's all go inside. If you recall, Lolita, I have something to tell everyone. With Sunny and the kids seated on the sofa, and Alba and Lolita on the love seat, Alba still fixated on Lolita's appearance, Sarah stood in front of them, rubbing her palms and gazing at the ceiling. Relax, honey, said Sunny. Everyone here loves you and is here to support you. I don't know how to say this, said Sarah, now swinging her arms and clenching her teeth. She noticed the time on the clock on the wall, 5:23 p.m. Just let it out, said Alba. The sooner the better. Sunny, said Sarah, scratching her forehead. Sunny, I don't plan to keep the appointment. I don't understand, said Sunny, sitting up. The cancer specialist, said Sarah. I don't plan to go forward with the treatments. I wanted to tell you this before I tell my parents. Who put you up to this? Said Alba, turning to Lolita. Was it the nightmare before Christmas? You can't be serious, said Sunny. Where did this come from? How long have you known this? It doesn't make sense. And should the kids even be hearing this? Yes, honey, said Sarah, puffing out her chest. They most definitely have to hear what I need to say. I'm with Sunny, said Alba. This is not a discussion fit for the children. Let Sarah talk, said Lolita. This is her home, and she decides what her children need to hear. Kids, said Alba, standing and stretching out her hand as a summons to Jackie and Sammy, who had been sitting quietly turning their heads from adult to adult. Sarah pushed Alba's hand away. Kids, you stay put. Mommy has something important to tell you. Honey, please, said Sunny, now standing. Let's talk this out in private. This is not the right time to be talking to the kids. We'll watch the kids, said Alba. You and Sunny go talk things out. Take your time. Time, said Sarah, teary-eyed. That's exactly what I don't have. Any day the end can come and my children aren't prepared. And why? Because I haven't prepared them. I understand that you're scared, said Sunny. I'm scared too, but that's no reason to skip the appointment. That's no reason to turn your back on common sense. The best thing for our family is for you to see the doctor. Is Mommy sick? Said Jackie. Yes, said Sarah, evoking a look of defeat on Sunny's face. Mommy is very sick. You don't look sick, said Jackie. It's a sickness you can't see yet, said Sarah. It's inside of Mommy, but soon you will see Mommy's body begin to change. Your Mommy's a fighter, said Alba. She's gonna fight this sickness and get better. You will see. Mommy's gonna live a long life. Alba, please, said Lolita. Don't give them false hope. I'm telling the truth, said Alba, standing over Lolita. Sarah will choose life and will spend many years with her husband and her children. She will see Jackie and Sammy through college and see them grow old. Lolita rose from the love seat and stood her ground. Sarah will not suffer needlessly. She will sleep when it is time. Sarah will choose life, said Alba, with a voice that filled the living room. She will choose death, said Lolita, equally as loud. Life, said Alba, leaning into Lolita. And I say death, said Lolita, leaning into Alba. And I say life, said Alba, grabbing hold of Lolita's shoulders. Death, death, said Lolita, locking onto Alba's arms. Sarah noticed the fear and confusion on her children's faces and broke her sisters apart. You're scaring the kids, for God's sake, said Sarah. I've already made my decision, so there is no use in fighting over it. And what decision is that? Said Alba. That I'm not going to take any medicines or get any treatments, said Sarah. I've seen my fate and nothing will prevent my death from coming. You see what you've done, said Alba, going for Lolita's neck. But before Alba could reach Lolita, Sunny stepped in between them and shouted, What is going on here? Doesn't anyone here care about the kids? Doesn't anyone care about what I feel? Don't we get any say in the matter? Sarah, this is not easy for me. I try to be optimistic every day. I try to bring you joy. But when no one is around, I weep and fight with God. Why, Lord, why are you doing this to my beautiful wife? Why are you tearing my family apart? I want you to grow old with me. I want you to see our children and grandchildren grow up. You're the love of my life, and I refuse to let you go. Please, don't go. Sunny bent over and wept. Daddy's sad, said Sammy. Daddy needs a hug, said Sarah. She put her arms around Sunny and motioned for the kids to do the same. Sarah rested her head on Sunny's shoulder and put one hand on Jackie's head and the other hand on Sammy's head. Lifting her eyes, she saw Alba on her right and Lolita on her left, the angel and the Katrina. She looked at Sunny and at her children, at the angel and the Katrina, at Sunny and her children, at the angel and the Katrina. She grabbed both her sisters' hands and found herself in a pitch-black tunnel. Her hands reached out for her sisters, for Sunny and her children, and came up against a hard wall. Her hands pressed firmly against the wall, scratched it and banged it. She rammed her body into the wall, hoping to break through it, to no avail. Sunny, where was Sunny? She needed Sunny. Why didn't he come for her? She reached for him on all sides, and now all sides were closed off by walls she couldn't see. She stopped fumbling in the darkness and stood completely still. Was this her coffin? Had she been dead all this time and never knew it or accepted it? You stopped dancing, said the voice. You have gotten stuck and only movement will bring you out of the darkness. I stopped dancing, she thought. When did I ever dance? In the procession, remember? In the celebration you danced. So dance again. But there is no music. So make your own. Yes, make my own. Sarah swayed her torso and her hips ever so gently, her eyes still closed. She raised and lowered her arms, mimicking the movement of snakes. A low hum escaped from her lips. Is Mommy dancing? Said Jackie. Sarah's mouth opened and released the chorus of Vivir mi vida from Mark Antony, a chorus she repeated 3 times. She opened her eyes and came alive with rhythmic movements and loud singing. Whoa, said Jackie, grabbing onto Sammy. And she's singing too. Somehow speakers in the house exploded with drums and trumpets and the sound of salsa. Sarah pulled Sunny and the kids toward her and got them moving to the music. What's gotten into you? Said Sunny, reluctantly dancing alongside Sarah. Life's gotten into me, said Sarah. Whatever it is, I like it, said Sunny, and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "What are you two standing around for?" said Sarah to her sisters. "I thought you always wanted me to dance with you." She tugged on their wrists and had everyone dancing in a circle in her living room. The kids giggled as she spun them around and around. Lolita raised her arms in jubilee, while Alba clapped to the rhythm. Sunny made everyone laugh when he broke out into ridiculous robot moves. The joy suddenly couldn't be contained in the small room. Sarah had to take it outside. The music followed them into the street, and it was so loud, neighbors came out of their houses and asked what was going on. "Life is going on," said Sarah. "Don't ask questions," said Lolita, taking young and old people by the hands. "Just join the dance," said Alba, nudging people off their lawns and off the sidewalk. "But I'll look ridiculous," said a few bystanders. "Most of us do," said Lolita. "Ridiculous and alive," said Alba. A procession formed down the street as streetlights flickered on, and neighbors brought out instruments and played along with the music. People who had never talked to one another were now singing and dancing side by side. Barbecue and sandwiches and tacos emerged from houses, ready to be shared, ready to fuel the festivities. Sarah and her family applauded when bright and sparkling colors lit up the night sky. She hadn't noticed when it became night she was having so much fun. She hadn't even noticed when her neighbors changed their clothing and were now dressed as heroes, villains, and cartoon characters. She was too busy singing and dancing to pay attention to the people moving toward her. As the crowd became too dense, Sarah ushered her children to Sunny, and just in time. She was whisked away and found herself rising above them. She was suddenly the old woman again, whirling and dancing with the giant Angel and the giant Katrina. People cheered them on and danced around them. Sunny and her children waved up at her and blew her kisses, and just as Jackie reached out to touch her, the mojiganga material crumbled and was carried away by a gentle night breeze. Sarah found herself standing next to her two sweaty sisters, Alba no longer dressed in white, and Lolita no longer in white makeup and a flowery dress. "Do you feel it?" said Sarah, as the people continued their procession down the street, leaving her and her family alone. "I think so," said Lolita. "Like something's been lifted off of me," said Alba. "Everything but the cancer," said Sarah. "You sure about that?" said Lolita. "No, I'm not sure," said Sarah. "But if it's there, I'm going to fight it. Me and Sunny, like always." She reached for Sunny's hand and held it tight. "Whatever medicines I have to take, whatever treatments I have to endure, I'm going to do it because life is worth living." "Hey, you got my vote," said Sunny. "You know something," said Sarah. The man was right. "What man?" said Sunny. "The owner of the puppet shop in Mexico," said Sarah. "You know, you never really told me much about what happened over there," said Sunny. "I'll tell you someday," said Sarah. "I promise. But when we were over there, he told me the mojigangas would speak to me, down deep in my soul." "What a weird thing to say," said Sunny. "That's what I thought," said Sarah. "And I never paid much attention. I mean, what could a puppet say to me?" "So what could a puppet say to you?" said Lolita. "It told me about the importance of helping others in their pain," said Alba. "Did anyone hear me ask Alba a question?" said Lolita. "I was talking to Sarah." "As I was going through my bouts of fear and sadness over my cancer, I kept seeing this image of me dancing between life and death, doing my best to fight both of them off," said Sarah. But now I know I should be dancing with them, hand in hand, as partners on the same journey. And the dance should be a celebration, a parade, where I invite God, family, friends, neighbors, heck, the whole city, why not? Like they do in San Miguel de Allende. And the dance, this is the most important part. The dance should be done with the ones I love most. Sarah pulled Sonny close to her and rested her arms over his strong shoulders. He put his hands around her waist and she began to sway. "Not again," said Jackie, slapping her forehead. Sarah sang out a series of la-la-las and whispered tenderly into Sonny's ear. "Dance me to the end of love," evoking a grin on Sonny's face. A passion they had not felt in years suddenly overwhelmed them, gifting them with the freedom to sing out an ardent rendition of Leonard Cohen's haunting lyrics they had suppressed for way too long. Sarah sang the loudest. She wanted the universe to hear her voice and feel her joy. No more inhibition, no more fear. Who cared if she had the voice of a toad? Sonny didn't care, and that was what mattered. Sonny and her children mattered. But the singing was not enough. Sarah wanted to be whisked away by Sonny's strong arms and be taken to places she had never been before. The title of the song turned into a demand. "Dance me to the end of love." Sarah and Sonny then twirled and danced past their children, and past her sisters, and past neighbors, and past memories both good and bad, and past health and sickness, to the outskirts of their street, down a beaten path, and promenaded into a starry night, gazing into each other's eyes like newlyweds, while a giant angel and a giant Katrina danced alongside them, escorting them into the first light of their new dawn. Thank you once again for listening to the whispers to our souls. I pray that we can all join together as brothers and sisters in this one celebration of life and death. All of us singing, all of us dancing, all of us sharing the gifts we have been given, especially to those who need it the most. If a tale speaks to you from this channel, please share it with someone who may need to hear it. Let's walk this road together, one whisper at a time.